Thank you, Madam Speaker. The purpose of this bill is set out by the member for Katie Bathurst is, I quote, to establish a school food program, unquote. And while I see in his preamble that the member has recognized that education is in the exclusive jurisdiction of each province, it nonetheless bears pointing out that the member might have been well advised to have sought a seat in the provincial legislature in the province where he could bring the bill forward. After all, Section 93 of the Constitution Act 1867 is clear, and I quote, in and for each province and legislature may exclusively make laws in relation to education, unquote. Furthermore, subsections 92.7 and 92.8 of the Constitution Act put charitable activities in municipal institutions squarely in the exclusive responsibilities of each province. It is possible the member for Katie Bathurst is laying the groundwork for running in a provincial election because he sees the handwriting on the wall as his party's prospects in the next federal election. But I can't blame him. However, if the member for Katie Bathurst is truly serious about helping parents to afford nourishing meals for their kids and themselves, this is something he could push for. Axe the carbon tax. I urge the member for Katie Bathurst to persuade his leader, the Prime Minister, that it would be better for Canadian families and better for him electorally to, I'll say it again, axe the carbon tax. Now, I want to share some talking points the member can use to persuade his leader. According to the 13th edition of Canada's Food Price Report 2023, by September last year, families across Canada were paying in excess of 10% more for their groceries. This year, Canadians' grocery bills have increased by another 8 to 9% or more. Vegetables are seeing the biggest price increases, and as a result, Canadian families are cutting back on their purchases of vegetables and other healthy foods choices for their children. About 20% of Canadians report skipping a meal a day. Food banks across the country are seeing record number of visits by Canadian families. The Cowardly Costly Coalition of the Liberals and NDP has been sleeping at the wheel as Canadian families pay more and more for their basic necessities of life. Canadians cannot afford a costly coalition. Canadians cannot afford more of what they have suffered under 8 years of irresponsible government. Madam Speaker, the reason for food inflation is not just because of too little competition in the grocery industry. Beginning in 2018, the Prime Minister has been gouging Canadian families with a regressive, unfair carbon tax 1, and inflating it year over year. And as of April Fool's Day 2023, the Prime Minister inflated carbon tax 1 to $65 a ton. And by April Fool's Day 2030, the Prime Minister wants to inflate carbon tax 1 to $170 a ton. But the Prime Minister hasn't stopped there. Oh no, as of Canada Day, the Prime Minister added another carbon tax. So now the Prime Minister is asking Canadians to pay 2 carbon taxes. Even worse, when the carbon tax is added at the pumps or on their home heating bills, Canadians are charged sales tax or HST on the carbon tax. There's no other way to put it. The Prime Minister and his costly coalition are charging Canadian families tax on tax. And between 2 carbon taxes on April Fool's Day 2030, the Prime Minister wants to charge truckers 61 cents or more for a litre of diesel fueled. And it's not rocket science, it's just basic math that the NDP Liberal doesn't seem to get.
We have a point of order. L'honorable député de Longueuil-Saint-Hubert.
The honourable member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert, rising on a point of order. Well, earlier I asked a question about housing and was called out for that. But currently we're debating a bill about children and how we need to do everything we can to ensure that children don't go to school with empty stomachs. But now the colleague is talking about the carbon tax. You know that's totally off topic. So can you call the colleague to order, please?
That when they're debating or asking questions about a particular bill, it should be related to the bill. And so I'm sure that the honourable member is going to bring it around back to the bill. And so the honourable member, Lambton Kent Middlesex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If it costs a farmer more to grow food and costs a trucker more to ship food, it's going to cost families more to buy food to feed their children. When the Bank of Canada Governor, Tiff Macklem, appeared on Monday before Finance Committee, my colleague, the member for Northumberland Peterborough South, asked the Governor how the carbon tax affects inflation. Governor Macklem said that that's really 2 separate questions.
Point of order, the honourable member for Vancouver East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I think you just instructed the member to stay on track per the discussion at hand, which is about ensuring that children do not go hungry in school. And then as soon as she gave that instruction, the member continued on with the speech as though that was not heard. So I seek your advice for the member to have clear instructions on how to follow the rules in this House.
I just want to remind members that there is some flexibility when it comes to debate, and I know that the honourable member just brought it back to where it was pertaining how it pertains to the debate itself, and so I will allow the honourable member to continue her speech. The honourable member for Elgin, for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Governor Macklem said there's two separate questions. The governor said, and I quote, "How much are the increases in the carbon tax adding to inflation each year?" And the member is about 0.15 percentage points of inflation. And that's the direct impact on those three components.
I'm sure that the honourable member, so point of order, the honourable member for Vancouver East, but I'm sure that I'm sure it's on the same point of order.
Yeah, I'm just trying to seek clarity from you, Madam Speaker, on what is the topic at hand that we're supposed to be discussing and whether or not the member is actually following those rules.
Yeah. So I just, again, want to indicate that there is some flexibility as to what a member speaks about during her speech or his speech when they are showing the relevance to the bill. And so I'm sure that the honourable member will be mentioning the bill and will be adding to the fact how this actually impacts the bill that's before the House. Another point of order, the honourable member for, I'm sorry, is the honourable member in his space, in his chair? If not, I can't recognize him. So, sorry. You have to be in your seat in order to be recognized. The honourable member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex, I'm sure that she's bringing it back around.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The three components the governor referred to were those raised by my colleague were gasoline, diesel fuel, and natural gas. And Governor Macklem continued.
Order, the honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
So, Madam Speaker, the kind of behavior I've seen from the Conservative Party, first the leader of the Conservative Party refusing to sit down, there seems to be a total disregard for rules and the Speaker of the House. I'm starting to get frustrated. This is an important matter. Kids starving when they're going to school. For some respect for families and kids that are struggling, can we actually talk about children being hungry in schools and stay on topic?
So I just want to indicate.
This is Standing Order 11.2, Madam Speaker, that is constantly being disregarded.
Yeah, so I think that the honourable member is basically bringing up a point of debate as opposed to a point of order. I just want to say that there is some flexibility as to relevancy, and so I think that we just need to allow the honourable member to continue with her speech for a bit to make sure that it does speak to the relevancy. And I see the honourable member for Brandon Souris is also getting up on a point of order.
Yes, thank you. Point of order, Madam Speaker. And of course, this is. I'd be surprised if the NDP weren't embarrassed that their coalition with the Liberal Party because of the inflation that's been caused.
I think that we are no, this is not. I've already ruled on the point of order, and I've indicated this is now becoming more of a point of debate. I will allow the honourable member to continue on with her speech, and I know that there's going to be some relevancy there, and I will allow her to do that. The honourable member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try again. At this rate, eliminating the carbon tax by the Bank of Canada. Pardon me, Madam Speaker, can I please revert back to the page before and start my time? Because I've been interrupted about 5
Points of order, the time was stopped, and so it has not impacted on the honourable member's time.
Thank you. Governor Macklem continued, and I quote, "The second question you asked me was what would the effect be on inflation if the carbon tax was eliminated? And that would create a one-time drop in inflation of 0.6 percentage points. So let me say that again. If the carbon tax were eliminated, that would result in a drop in inflation of 0.6 percentage points. The overall inflation rate is currently at about 3.2%. And at that rate, eliminating the carbon tax by the Bank of Canada governor's estimate would reduce inflation by more than 18%. The lead author of Canada's Food Price Report 20 2023, Dr. Sylvain Charlebois has pointed out that the carbon tax has made business expenses going up. Up and down the food chain, Dr. Charlebois points to, and I quote, a compounding effect, unquote, as the supply chain is exposed to increased costs from the carbon tax. So let's take a look at that supply chain and why food is costing more. The carbon tax increases costs for heating greenhouses, dairies, poultry, and hog barns. It increases costs for running machinery necessary for production operations, especially electricity. In fact, in 2020, according to Statistics Canada, production costs for greenhouses were up 31.8% above the 10-year average. And in 2021, the latest year for which facts are available from Statistics Canada, greenhouse costs were up over 9.3% over 2020. Electricity costs for greenhouses were up in 2021 by 8.2% over 2020. Other fuel costs were up 7.7% in 2020 over 2020. In case anybody does not see that this is a problem, Statistics Canada reports that as of 2021...
A point of order, the Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you have incredible patience. The first intervention was made about 5 minutes ago, asking the Honourable Member to have the respect to speak to the bill from our colleague, an important bill, which has no link to the carbon tax, etc. And so I think that out of respect for this institution, it is important that we cut off the member in her speech. The Conservative Party laughed this afternoon, laughed at the Speaker by remaining standing for a number of minutes without any intervention or consequences. And so now, once again, we are in the same situation, which is completely unacceptable. So the member must be made to stop speaking. I feel that these points of order are more points of debates. I've already mentioned that there is latitude for this.
The honourable member, maybe to throughout her speech, she should be mentioning a bit on how this impacts. Okay, how this is with reference to the bill itself. There is again, some flexibility, as I've indicated, but as to the relevancy as how this impacts the bill, which is an act to develop a national framework to establish a school food program. And so I just want to make sure that the honourable member is aware of that, and that honourable members recognize that there is some flexibility as to how we get there, but specific to the bill. Still another point of order? Okay, the honourable member for Grande Prairie Mackenzie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I do appreciate you ruling in that way. I do believe that there is an additional point of order. The number of times that my colleague has been interrupted during her speech clearly has to do with the price of food in Canada today. That's one of the underlying reasons, of course. I just, Madam Speaker, would ask, I know that you'd like me to get to the point, I'd like you to rule as to when it becomes harassment in this House, when there's constant points of order interrupting a speech that is clearly on the subject at hand.
Again, I don't think that I think that the honourable members who are raising a point of order are trying to see where the honourable member is going with her speech. And so, as I indicated, there is some leniency of relevancy, and if members remember correctly, it would be good to reference the bill every once in a while. And so I would ask the honourable member to maybe consider that. But again, I think that, everybody has a right to rise on a point of order. And again, I just want to ask the member to kind of bring it back towards the bill, and I will just leave it at that. So the honourable member for Lambton Kent Middlesex, it hasn't affected her time. She still has 4.5 minutes to complete.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, it does impact the bill because every step along the way, families wouldn't need a government program if they could afford to buy food. Right. And I'm getting there. It costs more to put inputs into food for farmers. It's going to cost more for families to buy food for their kids. Why are 2 million people in a month going to a food bank? They shouldn't need to. It's because of the policies of this government. We wouldn't need this kind of program, Madam Chair, if food inflation wasn't so high. buy, if the carbon tax wasn't on everything to the point where people can't afford to live, they can't afford to buy food, Madam Speaker, if it costs overhead to heat greenhouses, if it costs farmers overhead to heat their barns, of course the price of food is going to go up. And it's going to be hard for families to afford nutritious food because farmers need to make money too when they're trying to sell their crops. They have to pass it on to consumers. So if anybody doesn't see that the carbon tax increases the production cost of food, they're choosing not to see this. So again, if it costs a farmer more to grow food, it costs truckers more to ship the food, it costs families more to buy food, and they should be able to buy food with the money in their pockets that they take home and their wages. But this government is making it unaffordable for families, and we wouldn't need this government program if families could afford to buy their food. Madam Chair, families are seeing unaffordable price increases on the food they buy for their loved ones year over year, and almost daily I'm hearing in my office from folks, young and old, who are having difficulty getting by. Many don't have enough to buy their groceries or pay their heating bill or their rent or their mortgages, and more families are visiting food banks. Food bank usage hit another record high in 2023 with 2 million using a food bank in a single month. 2 million people cannot eat and satisfy their hunger with fluff reports or studies. Canadian consumers face inflation on food to 8 to 9% year over year. Again, 20% of Canadians report skipping a meal each day. What they need is lower grocery prices so that they can afford to feed their families. Meanwhile, this government just wants to tax to the max with 2 carbon taxes plus HST. So enough. Canadians deserve better than a Prime Minister and a government that just sees the going through the motions. The Prime Minister can deny it all he wants, but Canadians know that inflation is real. The Bank of Canada governor also said something last Monday at Finance Committee about how government spending affects the ability of the bank to bring inflation down. The governor indicated that government spending makes it more difficult for the bank to hold the line and bring the inflation rate down. And as a result, monthly mortgage payments for Canadian families are rising as they renew their mortgages. Their mortgage interest rates are almost double or more what the interest rate was to their previous renewal. High taxes, increased red tape, and bureaucracy have driven investment out of Canada, causing our economy to slide each year with a continued low Canadian dollar, making everything bought from our largest trading partner, the U.S., more expensive. Canada is on track to be one of the most unproductive and least prosperous countries in the OECD. The International Monetary Fund listed Canada as having the 6th worst misery index out of 35 industrialized countries. So simply put, the higher the score, the worse the economic situation. Canada's score is the 6th highest. But the NDP Liberal Party don't want to talk about any of this. They want to make it appear as though they're helping, even though the NDP Liberals are the cause of unaffordable prices and people's misery. That's why the Leader of the Opposition and we on this side of the House have been holding the Prime Minister to account and his government for spending and inflation. Madam Speaker, can there be any doubt? It's time for a real change from the inflationary, all too costly coalition of the NDP Liberal government. And to sum up Bill C-322, it's better suited to being put forward in a provincial legislature than in the national parliament. But for the member for Katie Bathurst is truly serious about helping Canadian families to afford nutritious food for their tables, he should persuade his colleagues to reduce food costs by axing the carbon tax. Thank you.